Friends, honoured guests and fellow athletes, welcome to our annual Burn Supper, and it's good to see so many people here this evening. There's a tradition growing up in the club that we have a Burn Supper at this time of year, but over the past few weeks there's been a discussion as to whether or not we should have the Burn Supper, whether or not there's an appetite to do it. But Rod, our fantastic webmaster, put out a poll as to whether or not we should do it. The results aren't yet been made public to the but you can find the results on a summary sheet that he's got. Despite that, we're going to stick with the end of January. Now you've got to realise there's a joke in there. I will pause, and if there's a pause, you've got to say, there was a joke there, wasn't there? Do try and find it. There'll be prizes at the end. Before we move on to the Burn Supper proper, we don't usually have intimations at the Burn Supper, but before we do so, I'm going to call upon Rotary and Bob Watson to say a few words.
Now we do this at the start because sadly I have this opportunity to talk about Roy Erskine, who has passed, and his importance to this club. Roy was a sterling Rotarian, and as such was given the job of Extension Officer, which means investigating neighbouring towns, villages to see suitability for forming a new Rotary club. But it was pretty obvious he picked Dunblane to inspect because he had a business in the high street anyway, and it saved him travelling backwards and forwards to Stick. But he worked very hard for a year or more because it takes that length of time to take a group of people and establish the fact that they are suitable and able to sustain a Rotary club. So Roy was the Extension Officer who reported back to Stirling Rotary that yes, Dunblane and Bridge of Allan could support a Rotary club, which is why we're here today, so many years after. He's also the guy who had the idea to have an Amam 40 years ago. I do believe, Stuart was telling me, I do believe he was given the job of community service, and he said, I'm damned if I'm raising funds in bits and pieces throughout the year, jumbo sales, tombolas. He said, I want to do one major exercise to raise funds for the year. And that's where the Amam came from. And 40 years later is, I believe, 450k. So he has been a very important person to the club. And just think about Roy and Shirley. Our thoughts go to Shirley. Because although he's been in hospital for some time, it's still a shock when it happens. Enough of the side part. I'll hand back to Chairman to drive the meeting forward.
Yes, me. Yeah, so that is very sad. I would say that in preparing for tonight, I was looking at the club history, which for those of you who don't know is called Bunkum. And it's been produced in various volumes, and the first volume covers the first 15 years of the club, and it tells us that on the 3rd of July 1975, after 2 years as president, Gerald Tope handed over to Roy Erskine as president in 1975. And over the course of the pages on those first 15 years, Roy Erskine's name appears, if not on every page, then certainly every second or third page. Usually to do with sport, it has to be said. The Athol Cup for golf for clubs in Perthshire was won in 77-78 by a team involving Roy the Wildkidden Trophy. Nobody could ever pronounce that, but we won it. And Roy and Les Ferguson and David Mackey were members of that team. Don't know how they managed to do that, but there you go. In curling, Charlie Proctor Broom. Roy was one of the skips that won there. And as Bob said, he contributed much to the club. It would be fair to say, however, in knowing Roy, as we all did, he wouldn't be someone that would let a little thing like death stand in the way of us having a good evening. So we are indeed going to drive on with the night. Stuart has scoured the length and breadth of the country for the cream of talented speakers. Sadly, of course, none of them were able to do it. But having failed in that, we've fallen back on our own club, and frankly, we are none the worse for that. So let me begin by introducing your top table to you, and if you would hold your rapturous applause until we get to the very end, then that will save embarrassment among my colleagues here at the top table. On my right, we have Craig Mayer. To my immediate right, we have Bob Watson. On my immediate left, we have President Alison McPherson. On his left, we have Jenny McPherson, and on the far left, Peter Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your top table. So we're going to begin the evening, as we always do, with a grace, and I would call upon Rotarian Craig Mayer to give us a grace.
Some hae meat but canna eat, some nae meat that wanted, but we hae meat and we can eat, and say the Lord be thanked.
Thank you, Craig. I think we're ready for the haggis, Eve. If the haggis is ready, if you've caught it, and the piper's ready. If it's coming in, ladies and gentlemen, I would invite you to stand to receive the haggis.
Would you look at that?
I will.
Therefore, your honest, did soncy face, great chieftain, the button race. Up in the more you attack your place, penge, tribe, or firm, will are you worthy of a grace, as long as only Graham Russell could do. Or even L'Oreal. The groaning trencher, there you fill your Haggis. Oh, like a distant hill. Your pen would help to mend a mouth in time of need. And while you're through your pores, the Jews distill like amber mead. His knife, see? Rusty Labor Day. And cuts you with ready slash, trenching your gushing entrails, break like on a ditch. What a glorious thing. Warm, reeking, rich. Then horn for horn they'll delve in downmost, then deal to the hindmost. Or they'll drive till all the wheels swell, kites be alive, or bent like drums. And then the old good man may slight to drive. Be thanking us. Is that? No. Is that right? The Irish French ragout. Or oleo. There was still a shoe. Or fricassee. That would make you spew at perfect scum. Looks down with sneering, scornful view on sicker dinner. Eh? There, devil, see him at his trash. As feckless as a weather rash. His spinal shanks will get whiplash, and his knave and nut. Through bloody flood and field to dash. How unfit. But Mark the rustic, Haggis fit. The trembling resumed his hey, clapping his welling evenly, and he make it whistle, and heads, and arms, and legs he'll snag like the tops of thistles. Ye powers, what make mankind your fear? And dish them up, their bill of fare. All Rotarians don't want skinking ware that chops in luggage. But if you give us if you give a papal prayer, then give us Haggis. Come and get it. There you go. Smash Now give us a ball.
Sounds fit the style of the music, you know. So it's, you can't have one size fits all. In fact, one of the things.
Well, good evening once again. I'm sorry to interrupt the chat, but there's a reason why we're here.
It's not today.
Welcome to the No It's Not Me. So, back again, lovely meal as ever, so thanks to the fella for that.
Yep.
Yes.
Before the meal, Craig gave us grace. Craig, as you know, is a man of multiple skills and talents and hobbies and activities. He started a new activity recently. He's taken up a course of engraving. There's a lot to learn in engraving. He's only just scratched the surface.
That was a joke.
Thank you for noticing. Bob addressed the Haggis as only Bob can do, and as we expected Bob to do, and did that superbly. Bob's, and he's not going to mind me saying this, Bob's getting on in the years a little bit, and he's finding it harder on Thursday nights to walk home from the club. back up the hill, especially with all these bloody roadworks outside. To help him on his way, he's decided that he's going to buy a head torch. It'll be in charge of all his other torches.
Oh, another joke.
You're being spoiled.
We began the evening on a bit of a sad note, talking about Roy. And in fact, last Monday, I think, is known as Blue Monday in January. So to cheer myself up, I've booked myself an expensive trip. I'm taking the dog to the vet tomorrow.
That's not a joke.
So that's what Alistair's doing, yeah. The first recorded Burns celebration was in July 1801 on the anniversary of his death, and then they changed that to January to fit in with his birth. In simplistic terms, we would say that a Burns supper is one of the most celebrated events in our cultural calendar, celebrated here and, as we know, throughout the world. Burns has evolved over more than 200 years to become an icon of Scotland and an icon of our Scottish identity. And a Burns supper is an important part of that. It celebrates Burns and it celebrates Scotland. You'd be interested to know, I hope, that there are more than 60 statues to Robert Burns across the world, not just in Scotland, but across the world. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, you would expect these places, lots and lots in the USA. There's even one in Tallinn, which is the capital of Estonia, and it's in a park. And there's a statue of Robert Burns here, and on the other side, there's a statue of another great Scotsman, Big Tam, Sean Connery. How impressed the Estonians must be to know that Robert Burns shares a park with Sean Connery. Talking of action heroes, our first speaker this evening is President Alistair, who's going to deliver the Immortal memory. This is a central, I'm reading this now, this is a central and crucial part of any Burns supper and is to be taken most seriously, according to the World Federation. Alistair's sitting next to his wife Jenny. Before he married Jenny, he was engaged to be married not once, but twice. And in each occasion, the wedding was called off. That was a couple of near misses. I thought that was very good.
Thank you again, sir.
Sorry, Jenny, don't do that. I'm sorry.
It's funny when the truth comes out.
Alistair's a stickler for accuracy, and one of his pet peeves in the minutes that we get are typos. He really gets very upset at those. And one example of how he gets upset at typos was he was at a Pilates class last week and was the only one with a hook and a wooden leg. Delivering this evening's Immortal memory, it's President Alistair McPherson.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Rotarians and guests. Yeah. Over the years, I'm sure, like myself, you've been to many Burns suppers and heard many Immortal memories. Well, maybe a bit like Alistair, I was looking up to see what should be included in I was going to say moral memory, anyway, Immortal memory. And in one it said you've got to combine scholarship with wit and antidote. Well, anecdote, there you go. We might need the antidote in the end of this. Yeah. Well, no, some bots would say. Well, I found that most of the ones I looked up, wit and humour were definitely missing. So there's not much cutting and pasting in this one. And some years ago, Jenny and I went to a Burns supper in the British School of Paris, which had been organised, and there was a bit of money with some of the parents, and they had invited a member of the Burns Association to come and give the Immortal memory. Well, after 45 minutes, when Burns had become 9, a lot of whiskey was drunk that night. So I've decided this might not be too amusing, but it will hopefully be short. And in fact, as Alistair's done most of it already, it might be even shorter. But as you're all aware, Burns was born the son of a poor farmer in Alloway in Ayrshire on the 25th of January 1759. But despite his poverty, Burns' father managed to get him some form of an education. So he went to school from between the ages of 6 and 9. That's some education. But it's worth noting that in Victorian times they decided to downplay his education because it was far better to have this rather uneducated poet than somebody who had 3 years of education. Yes, well, the Victorians have got lots of that. For most of his life, Burns had to work on the farm, undernourished, out in all weathers, underpaid, and apparently farmers still claim that today. And the result, which of course was that he died of in poverty at a young age of 37. And although he died in poverty at 37, over 10,000 people attended his funeral. Now tonight, I would like to take a very brief tour around his genius and maybe start with the tiniest aspect of it. And of course, you'll all remember and be able to join in with me, Ode to a Louse, which he wrote after watching a louse burying its way into the hair of an attractive young woman sitting in front of him in church. Now, it's quite an odd Sunday, I think, for Burns to be sitting at the back of the church, because he normally sat in the stool at the front for the minister to have a go at him. Anyway, he chastised the creature. "How, where are you going, you crawling ferty? Your impudence protects you sairly. I canna say, but ye struts rarely our gauze and lace, though faith I fear ye dine but sparsely on such a place." Well, of course, Burns being Burns does point out that the louse doesn't really matter how posh the head is that decides to land on. A scalp is a scalp after all, and it's believed that the girl in question wasn't really as posh as described here, but it was probably a young lady called Jenny, who was one of his special friends. Now, Burns and his brother joined the country dancing at 20, and then together, when he was 21, he founded the Turbolton Bachelors Club. Rule number 10 of the Bachelors Club, and I really need to check to see if this is actually in the Rotary Club rules, was every man proper for a member of the society must be a professional lover of one or more of the female sex. So I'll check with the secretary to see if that's there. I'll also check with rule number 1, which is that the first rule of the Bachelors Club of Turbolton was you don't talk about anything that happens at the Bachelors Club of Turbolton. But as things get bigger, in To a Mouse, Burns recognised the plough to the mouse whose nest is overturned with his plough, and he makes an appeal to this tiny animal. "We sleek it cure and timorous beastie, oh what a panic's in thy breastie, thou needna start a wassy hasty wi' bicker and brattle, I would be laith to rin and chase thee with murdering prattle." And of course the English scholars will realise that John Steinbeck used this in the title of his famous work of Mice and Men. And moving up a size perhaps, to Burns all people were born equal, and a man's worth doesn't depend on their bank account or the size of their house or their car. And he most famously stated, "Is there for honest poverty that hangs his head and all that? The coward slave we pass him by, we dare be poor for all that. For all that and all that, our toils obscure and all that, the rank is but the guinea stamp, the man's the gowd for all that." And if we go up again, we come to one of the points that, of course, Rabbi was famous for, was the nature of two people's relationship. And of course, illicit relationships and fathering illegitimate children were really rather parallel to the productive lifestyle that he had. And his correspondence with Agnes Nancy McLewes resulted in the classic I Fond Kiss, in which he writes a brilliant story, including the ecstasy and the pain of love. Now, he wrote that when Nancy was about to leave the country to try and patch things up with her husband. And his relationship with Nancy was interesting because although it was consumed with passion and fire, it was all done really in letters, and it had never got physical at all, other than the fact that Burns managed to get her maid pregnant. Now, he reduces everything to one basic and overpowering emotion, the emotion of having loved and having had to part. And Walter Scott commented that in this poem, Burns sums up the essence of 1,000 love tales, and furthermore, this one verse is worth 1,000 romances. Well, Walter Scott was a bit of an old romantic himself. I fond kiss and then we sever, I farewell and then forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Who shall say the fortune grieves him, while the star of hope she leaves him? Me nae cheerful twinkle lights me, dark despair around benights me. Now, I'll conclude in saying that this is a real example of Burns' genius that we're all familiar with. And Burns at his biggest, his most universal, was amazing. And we know that as the bells chime at New Year across the world, millions of people sing his words. Well, most of them sing the words, some of them vary them slightly. And there's a hand, my trusty Finn, and gie's a hand o' thine, and we'll take a right good willie walked for auld lang syne. And so there we have it, the genius of a man who could appreciate the world from the smallest and the meanest to the bigger picture, and of course to the most profound. Burns was of course a nationalist, and through his language, and he was also an internationalist through his beliefs and his ideals. And I would remind you that this poet, who left a myriad of completely and utterly well-respected poems behind him, died in poverty at 37, just at the time when he had been appointed as an exciseman in Dunblane. However, his life as a true poet was reflected in the fact that on the day of his funeral, his wife Jean Armour gave birth to her latest son, which was Burns' 13th child. So thanks for listening, and I think it's about time again, ladies and gentlemen, to take your glasses and give a toast to the immortal memory of the storyteller, the poet, the pioneer, the ladies' man, the romanticist, the rebel, the raconteur. Is that enough time to stand, Bob?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I made it.
The one and only, the barb, Robbie Burns.
Thank you very much, President Alistair. Alistair, as you know, was in the army originally in his career, and after he left the army, he went back to work in Germany, which for the purposes of this story is near France. Alistair decided that he wanted to renovate his kitchen, and for some reason decided that the look he was going for in the kitchen was 18th century historical French, not necessarily something you get the German equivalent of B&Q. But Alistair, having these transferable skills, knew what to do. So he got a grenade and he pulled the pin out and he threw it into the kitchen. And by some miracle, it worked. Linoleum blown apart. Thank you very much.
We'll give you that one.
Our next speaker this evening is Rotarian Stuart Brown, who's going to toast the lassies. This is going to be a speech about the importance of women in our lives, drawing references to Burns, the woman in his life, his attitudes and views on women, and concluding on a complimentary and positive note. Well, we'll see about that. Stuart's a very upbeat person, and we know Stuart's very upbeat, in fact, irritatingly upbeat sometimes. But Stuart's a very upbeat person. But there was a period of time when it wasn't always like this. These were dark days, and Stuart was living hand to mouth. And you'll never ever forget the friend who gave him something that changed that forever. Cutlery. To propose the toast to the lassies, happy to call upon Rotarian Stuart Brun.
I'll just shout from down here. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, because I did this last year, it's a privilege to stand again here tonight and with tasks to the toast to the lassies. It's a daunting job for which a mere mortal can do anything to the wonders of women, especially in the presence of a good plate of haggis and some hungry Rotarians. But Robert Burns, as you know, he loved the lassies. So much so he wrote poems, songs, and as we've heard already, rumour has it anyway, that he did write a few desperate love letters, to which a lot of your pals would bear, yeah, I've been there, mate. But didn't seem to work for us, but it did for him. And who to blame him? The lassies keep us on our toes, inspire our best behaviour, and sometimes remind us when our kilt's on the wrong way round. So, to the lassies, without your wisdom, your patience, uncanny ability to find anything that we've lost, particularly when it's right in front of us, where would we be? Whether you're a Bonnie Jean, a wise Agnes, or just one, like my wife, who reminds us that whiskey isn't really a food group, and we would raise a glass to you. So here's to the lassies. May your laughter be infectious, your patience be endless, and you'll never run out of ways to keep us on our toes. Gentlemen, you raise your glasses to the lassies.
To the lassies.
Thank you, Stuart. To reply on behalf of the lassies, delighted to welcome Jenny McPherson. As you know, Jenny's married to President Alistair. They go away in their caravan quite a lot. Alistair's always telling us about his trips away in the caravan. And last year they were away in the caravan, and Alistair, because they were on holiday, hadn't shaved for a few days. So Jenny thought, well, we'll get him tidied up a bit here. So she was really very pleased with herself. And she had the whole work. She had the hot towels, and the shaving foam, and the open razor. And she was really delighted. She gave him a great shave, and she was really pretty happy. But Alistair brought her back down to earth and said that she'd done a terrible job. And she said to me, the bloody cheek of it. To reply on behalf of the lassies, I'm delighted to welcome Jenny McPherson.
I got conned into this one. But thank you, Stuart, for your words. And I'll have to say that Burns didn't always treat the lassies that well. The song that I'm going to sing shows that he had some compassion for the effects of loving the lassies a bit too much. The song Ye Banks and Braes is actually based on a true story of a girl from Carrick, from the Carrick area, which is now part of Ayrshire, and she fell in love with a wealthy Wigtonshire lad, became pregnant, was deserted by him, and died of a broken heart. The River Doon forms the boundary between the two areas. Anyway, you now need to suspend belief and imagine that I am a young woman And this is the song she sings before she dies. Sadly. Let me just get a note. Ye banks and braes of bonny Doon, how can ye bloom sae fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little bird, and I say weary, full of care? You'll break my heart, ye woven bird, that wantons through the flowery tree. Ye mind me, oh, departed joys, departed never to return. After I rove by bonny Doon, to see the rose and woodbine twine, and ilka bird sang o'er its love, and fondly say did I, oh mine, willing some heart I put a rose, for sweet upon its thorny tree. But my false lover stole my rose, but he left the thorn with
That was lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Partly, Jenny, who's normally got a very sunny disposition, wasn't quite as sunny this morning when she discovered that Alistair had used the last 2 pieces of bread to make toast. As he said, it turns out that Jenny is lactose intolerant.
Another one.
There are CDs available for sale. No one supper would be complete without a recitation, and this evening we're going to hear from Rotarian Peter Williams. As you know, as an accountant, Peter's really not very good with numbers, and this also extends to certain aspects of his online life. Now, he knows that you're not meant to reuse the same password, but what confuses him is that he read that you're meant to change your password from time to time. With Tam Shanter, it's Peter Williams.
The chatting billies leave the street, and drouthy neighbours meet, as market days are wearing late, and folk begin to tap the bait, while we sit boozing at the nappy and getting full and unhappy. We think nay of the lang Scots miles, the mosses, water, slaps and styles that lie between us and our hame, where sits our sulky sullen dame, gathering her brows like a gathering storm, nursing her wrath to keep it warm. This truth found honest Tam o' Shanter as he prayer I night to canter. All there where no tune surpasses for honest men, aye, and bonny lasses. Ah, Tam, had thou been but so wise as ta'en thy ain wife Kate's advise, she's taught thee well there was a skellum, a blethering, blustering, drunken blellum, that frae November till October, I market day thou wast a sober. That ilka melder with a miller, thou sat as lang as thou hadst siller. That every knave was kaid a shoe, and the smith and thee got rower and fuan. That at the Lord's house, even on Sunday, thou drank with Kirk and Jean till Monday. She prophesied that late or soon thou would be found deep down, drowned in Doon, or catched by warlocks in the mark, by alloys or haunted kirk. Ah, gentle dames, it gars me greet to think how mony counsels sweet, how mony Lunsland sage advises, the husband for the wife despises. But to our tale I market night, Tam had got planted unco right, fast by an ingle breezing finely were reaming swats that drank the wine, and at his elbows suitor Johnny, his ancient trusty droofty crony. Tam loaded like a very brother, they had been food for weeks together. The night grown with sangs and clash, and how the ale was growing better, the landlady and Tam grew gracious with favours secret, sweet and precious. The suitor told his queerest stories, the landlord's laugh was ready chorus. The storm without might roar and rustle, Tam didn't mind the storm a whistle. Care mad to see a man so happy, e'en drooned himself among the nappy. As bees flee hame were laid to treasure, the minutes winged their way with pleasure. Kings may be blessed, but Tam was glorious, for all the ills of life victorious. But pleasures are like poppies spread, you seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then melts forever, or like the borealis race that flitter, you could count their place, or like the rainbow's lovely form, vanishing amid the storm. Nay, man can tell her time nor tide, the hour approaches, Tam will ride. That hour of night's black arch the key stain, the dreary hour he mounts his beast in, and sick a night he tacks the road in, as ne'er poor sinner was abroad in. The wind blew as 'twould blow its last, the doubling storm rose on the blast, the speedy gleams the darkness followed, loud, deep, and lang the thunder bellowed. That night a child might understand, the deal had business on his hand. Wheel mounted on his grey mare Meg, a better never lifted leg, Tam skelped on through dub and mire, despising wind and rain and fire, while cruising o'er some old Scots sonnet, while holding fast his good blue bonnet, while glowering round with prudent cares, lest bogles catch him unawares. Kirkalloway was drawing nigh where ghosts and hoods nightly cry. By this time he was past the ford, when in the snow the chattins smored, and past the Western Meeklestane where drunken Charlie brought next Spain, and boon the thorn aboon the well when Mungo's mother hung herself. Before him Doon pours all her floods, the doubling storm roars through the woods, the lightnings flash from pole to pole, near and more near the thunder rolls, when glimmering through the groaning trees, Kirkalloway seemed in a breeze. Through ilka bore the beams were glancing, and loud resounded mirth and dancing. Ah, inspiring bold John Barleycorn, what dangers there could mak a scorn? Wi' Tuppeny wi' fear and evil, wi' Usquaw Bay, we'll face the deal. The squat sae reamed in Tavies Nordal fair play. He came the deal's a bottle, but Maggie stood right, sair astonished, till by the heel and hand admonished she ventured forward on the light, and wow, Tam saw an unco sight. Warlocks and witches in a trance, nay, cotillon bent new frae France, but hornpipes, jigs, strathspeys, and reels put life and metal in their heels. A winnet bunker in the east there sat all Nick in shape a beast, a towsy type, black, grim, and large. To give him music was his charge. He screwed the pipes in darkened dirls, and roof and rafters all did dirl. Coffins stood round like open presses, which showed the dead in their last dresses, and by some devilish cantrip slight, each in its cold hand held a light, by which heroic Tam was able to note upon the haly table a murderer's banes and gibbet arms, 'twas span langwee and christened bairns, a thief new cutting for the rape with his last gasp and gab to gape, 5 tomahawks with murder crusted, 5 scimitars with blood red rusted, a garter which a babe had strangled, a knife a father's throat had mangled, o' his ain son o' life bereft, the grey hairs yet stuck to the heft, wi' mair o' horrible and awful, which e'en to name would be unlawful. As Tammy glowered amazing curious, the mirth and fun grew fast and furious. The piper loud and louder blew, the dancers quick and quicker flew. They reel, they set, they cross, they click it, till ilka carlid swat and reek it, and cussed their dillies to the whack, and licked it at their sark. Oh, a tam, had they been queens, plump and strapping in their teens, their sarks instead of creasy flannan been snow white 17 under linen. These breeks of mine, they only pair, the ents were plushed to good blue hair. I would have given them up a hardness for I brink of the bonny birdies. But Tam knew what was what full fairy. There was I, winch and wench and wally, that night enlisted on the corps, lang after Kent and Carrickshore. For mony a beast a dead she shot, and perished mony a bonny boat, and spake both meikle corn and beer, and kept the countryside in fear. Her cutty sark of Paisley Harn, that while a lassie she had won, in longitude though fairly scanty, it was her best and she was vanity. Little Kent, thy reverend granny, that sark she caught for her wee nanny, with 12 pound Scots, with all her riches, would ever grace a dance of witches. But here, my muse her wingman cower, such flights are far beyond her power, to sing her nanny lap and flang, a supple June she wasn't strang, and how Tam stood that ain bewitched, and thought his very e'en enriched. E'en Satan glowered and fidged from fain, and huffed and flew with might and main, till first I caper sin another, Tam tint his reason all together, and yells out, "Well done, Cutty Sark!" And in an instant all was dark, and scarcely had he Maggie rallied, but out that hellish legion sallied, as bees without with angry pipe, when plundering herds assail their bike, as open pushes mortal foe, when pop she starts before her nose, as eager runs the market crowd, when "Catch the thief!" resounds aloud, as Maggie runs the witches follow, with many an eldritch screech and hollow. Tam, forget their fame. In hell they'll roast thee like a herring. In vain thy Kate awaits thy coming. Kate soon will be a woeful woman. But do thy speedy utmost next. Win the key stain of the brig, where at them now thy tail may toss. A running stream they darena cross. But ere the key stain she could make. Oh. Sorry? The fainter tail she had to shake, for Nanny far before the rest, hard upon noble Maggie pressed. She flew at Tam with furious ettle, but little was she Maggie's mettle. I spring brought up on Master Hale, but left behind her ain grey tail. The carlin caught her by the rump, but left poor Maggie scarce a stump. Now, wha this tale o' truth shall read, ilk man and mother's son, tak heed. Where to drink you are inclined, or Cutty Sarks run in your mind, think ye may buy your joys o'er dear. Remember Tam o' Shanter's there.
Thank you very much, Peter. Next on the programme is the raffle. It's an old joke that I use every year, but it's none the worse for that. Whoever won Graham in the raffle last year has clearly brought him back. So once again we're raffling Graham Russell. As you know, Graham gives a lot of his time to the club and to organisations such as Friends of Bridge of Allan, and it was in that capacity that he recently wrote to Stirling Council and offered to be the local noise pollution officer. He even offered to work for free, but they turned him down. It's an impossibility, Graham.
It was a near miss.
Call upon Graham and his friends to run the raffle.
Thank you. I could do one more runner, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Like a quick raffle. Vote of thanks is next, and it's that man again, Stuart Brown. Stuart's recently retired from his work, and I'm not saying that his retirement was hastened by this, but while he was at Stirling, they sent him on a course because apparently it was felt among the men that he was lacking in empathy and soft skills. So during the course of this course, they were talking about emotions, and Stuart was asked what he thought the opposite of woe was. But apparently giddy up was the wrong answer. Delighted to call upon Rotary Stuart Brown to deliver the vote of thanks.
I'd like to point out giddy up was the right answer. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've had an enjoyable night tonight. I think there's lots of folk put these kind of things, these evenings together, and the work goes on behind the scenes is sometimes unseen. I think we've also very much in the last few years tried to key into the skills around the members and friends of the club, and I think it's clear tonight that these skills are high. It's always been a thing in Rotary that we possibly ignore our own talents, excluding mine, of course. But I think tonight we've really been shown a lot of what people have to offer, and have made this a great evening that folk have enjoyed listening and socialising with members of our own club and spouses, so it's good for that. I think so. Just to run through the people who I might want to thank. I think the hotel, as usual, have provided us with a lovely meal, and I'd like to thank the hotel for providing the meal. Piper Archie, who's probably sitting here like a fish out of water, but has come down from QV school. And pretty much plugged his pipes in and played for us at the drop of a hat. Terrific play, and we thank you very much for it. It was splendid. Craig, of course, was a head teacher of history and has this capacity of eloquence that perhaps some of us lack, and delivered grace in the manner that we might expect. So thank you for the grace, Craig. Now, Alistair mentioned a close shave, and I think when Bob was throwing that dagger about, he was probably pretty close to one. Bob, fantastic address. I think you had it absolutely perfect. Clearly, it's something you've done before, and it was very enjoyable, if not slightly dangerous. And next year, if you would do it again, there'll be a risk assessment. So, Bob, thank you very much. Jenny, your song was lovely, beautifully sung. That's a pretty hard gig to stand up in front of people without any musical accompaniment, and clearly you're a lovely singer, and thank you so much for doing that. Well, there's not much you can say about Peter. Shanter's always a treat to have the capacity to remember that and to produce it so accurately. It's phenomenal. If only he could get his scorecard on a Saturday so accurate, it would be super. So Peter, Shanter, wonderful. Thank you so much. And Graham and Russell on the raffle, thanks again for doing it. Raffle's something that we sort of go hot and cold about, should we have a raffle or not, but once again, everybody's contributed. I hope that people feel that who've won a prize have done well. Graham, thanks for doing that. It raises funds for the club and helps keep the economics of running an evening like this reasonable. So thank you, Graham and Russell, for doing that. And I hope I haven't missed anyone other than Alistair. Alistair, the sort of pithy puns of Radio Scotland were well picked up in your presentation tonight. Obviously, there's a lot of time spent on the big book of dodgy jokes. Nonetheless, we couldn't do it without you. I think you've held the evening together well, and I think everybody should put their hands together, especially for Alistair, for cooperating. I think that's a lot, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. So we're winding down now. You'll be aware that last week it was the 10th anniversary of the death of David Bowie, the musician David Bowie. Bowie had lots of nicknames: Ziggy Stardust, Thin White Duke, Starman, and so I'm delighted to call upon our very own Starman, President Alistair McPherson, to give us the closing comments and final toast.
Thank you very much, Alistair. I was going to say, for those who don't know, my second career after the army was in the world of astronomy. And the one thing that the astronomers never really got their head around was the fact that although I was fascinated with building telescopes and instruments for telescopes and all the communications and software and stuff that went around them, I had absolutely no real interest in the stars. But such was life. I seemed to pick up a little bit of it as I went along. But I would like to add my thanks to everyone who participated this evening, and of course Stuart omitted himself in his vote of thanks, and I would like, on behalf of you all, I hope, to thank Stuart, because he was the one who pulled the whole thing together as a one-man act of just pulling everything together. He didn't really delegate very much. He may tell you something about his delegation skills, of course. However, I think it's just that he just wanted to go on and get it done, and he produced, I think you'll agree, a really super evening. So Stuart, thank you very much. I of course like to welcome again our guests from Calendar and from Stirling, and we do look forward to your 100th birthday party. It should be good fun. We are looking forward to that. Apparently there was no birthdays this week, so no happy birthday, no cakes or anything like that. And next week we've got John Miles talking to us about global site solutions. So we should see a lot from that. Closing comments. Well, I looked around for some sort of comment for tonight, and as it's a Burns night, I decided that you'd all probably be quite happy for Burns' poem, Macpherson's Farewell. Say rantin' lacy, wantin' lacy, down to Gada he played a spring and danced it round below the gallows tree. Farewell, ye dungeons dark and strong, the wretch's destiny. Macpherson's time will not be long on yonder gallows tree. Oh, what is death but parting breath on many a bloody pain? I've dared his face, and in his place I'll scorn him yet again. Untie these bands from off my hands and bring me my sword. There's no a man in all of Scotland, but I'll brave him at his word. I've lived a life of strut and strife, I die in treachery. It burns my heart I must depart, and not avenged be. Now farewell light, thou sunshine bright, and all beneath the sky. May coward shame disdain his name, the wretch that dares not die. Say rantonly, say wantonly, say dauntonly gaed he. He played a spring and danced it round below the gallows tree. Ladies and gentlemen,
Go!
I give you the toast, Rotary International and Rotarians everywhere.
Thank you, Alistair. So, as we draw to an end of the evening, we can't do so without singing Auld Lang Syne. In past years, you've all been very good to join in with me before it becomes apparent that I can't hold a tune in a bucket. But I'm going to start you off, and please do join in very quickly. Should
old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot, or old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take a drop o' kindness yet for old lang syne. Now here's a hand